Welcome back to Sam Tutorials. In today's lesson we'll start learning how to create a roleplay game mode. Once we've created a roleplay game mode, we will move on to other game modes. So, first of all, we want to start from a completely blank script. I know that might sound really scary, but to be truthful, it's easier to start from scratch than to actually try and edit someone else's work. So first of all, if you've watched episode 1, you will already have your SAMP folder, which contains all the files we need to start scripting. If you haven't, just pop back, watch episode 1 and come back and join us right here. So once you've opened up your SAMP folder, you want to open Pawno, the Pawno application, which in the first episode you should have set it to administrator. Okay, so now we're ready to start scripting. So you just want to click on File, New, and then right click, select all, and press delete. We don't want any of the old stuff at all to start with. These parts we could just delete sections, but it's a lot easier if you just delete the whole lot of it and start from scratch. So with a blank game mode, if you comply it, which will also require you to save it, so custom doing tutorials, saving one as tutorials, you can save it as what any name you want. Right, so we've got an error. That's your first section of the error is the location of the actual file. Then you have the line that the error's on. So as you create more and more scripts into the game mode, you get more and more lines. And you see at the moment we've got another 1, and beforehand we had 1 to whatever amount of lines you have. Then the error code and what the actual error actually means. No entry point, no public functions. Basically it's just telling you that there's nothing in the script at all, that there's no functions, there's nothing to do, there's nothing for all the game mode to run. So now we just want to click the cross in that because we know why. So first of all we need to make an include. Without the include we can't add new parts. The new parts will consist of updates, new parts of the game are being added. Each time SAMP is updated and they add more stuff, they add all the stuff to their own personal include, which is what we need. The first line of the script should be hash include, which is now telling the script to go into your directories, into your Pawno, and into the include file, and then it'll look through this whole load of files and find the one you want. So this is one we're going to use. So as you can see, inc.inc, which stands for .include. Right. So we know. So the computer knows what it's looking for. Icon. Then the name of the file. And then just close it back off. And that's that line done. So now, if we compile it again, we'll get no errors, because there actually is something there for it to read. Okay, so now the next part of the script we need to do is, since we're getting no errors and it knows the main section we're reading from, which contains all the major parts of creating a basic game mode, when you open up SAMP client, and it shows you the game mode name, we need to set that. But to set that, the line has to be set on game mode in it. So we need to create a public on game mode. Right, if you're creating a new public, which is a section area of code where we can add new parts, you do have to create a forward. But since on game mode in it, and most of the publics we're going to be using are already have all the forwards contained in the SAMP include. So now we just need to open it up. If you press tab, it has a set number of spaces, saves you pressing space all the time, as not many people actually know this, and it's horrible to sit there pressing space time and time again. So now on the public, we need to type in set game mode text. And now in the enclosed area we have here, this is where you'll type it in. So whether you call it Lost Haven, or Convoy Trucking, or just San Andreas, or Roleplay, you can type it in there. But since many people prefer to have a more simpler way, so instead of looking through the whole list of game mode, try and find this one piece, we can define it, which means we can type in game mode here. We need to close it off at the end as well, so that line, that's a set line now, so the computer knows when it reads it, set game mode text, the name or the defined name which you'll look for throughout the script, and that line ends. Now I just need to type return 1 when I decide to spell correctly, return space 1, close that line off again. You must remember to close each line off, otherwise the script won't be able to tell which line's which. And we put return 1 so it knows that it should return that it shouldn't return a value. So now we just need to go back and close that whole public off again. So now that public is finished for the time being. So now if we comply it, we get the error undefined symbol game mode. Since we defined game mode instead of typing in an actual word, it will say it's undefined. To define something, hash define, start saying this line is for defining a section. Game mode, the name of the code that we need to define, and then we have to say that it's actually text, so we can close it. And now we want to call it tutorial, or I decided to spell properly again. Sorry about this, guys. I'm multitasking at the time, trying to read one screen whilst typing on another and typing on the keyboard. It is quite complicated. So now we can comply it again, which whenever you comply it, it does save it. It always saves when you comply. It's saying we've got no errors. So now, when we put this on a server and it loads, if I just open SAMP here where it says mode is just now defined. So instead of saying mode convoy trucking 2.6 beta, our mode, or game mode if we've called it, will now be called tutorial. That's the main area of how to start making it look like a server. Now now if we put this onto a server, nothing will happen, because it'll come with the class selection and that'll be about it, because there's no spawn information, no nothing. So it'll just spawn us with CJ skin under the map coordinates for zeros, which is in Blueberry Farm area, and that's where you'll spawn. But since we don't want to spawn there, we want to spawn, say, in Los Santos, we have to go ahead and define. Okay, so now we need to define the spawn. I know the video might sound a bit weird, but I just had to nip off and grab a quick drink. So to define the spawn, we need to use a public. Without the public, it'll just be random code and you get errors. So we need to use public on player request class. On player request class is done as requesting the class. So when you join a server, it may let you choose your skin, which may be set as, police, paramedics, gangs, and so forth. They're all classed as a class, or a gang, a faction. There's loads of different names for them. But in scripting, the class is down as a class. So we need to put player ID. We add the player ID here so that it knows that it's to do with a specific player. The player who joins. Every player who joins the server is designated their own ID. You can find out your ID and other player's ID by pressing tab in game, and it does actually tell you on the panel. Now we need to choose class ID. Class ID is so once you've actually chosen what class you're in, it then sets that class to you until you log out, then it is erased. Now we just need to close that line off and open it up again. On a public, you don't close the line off. If you close the line off, then it's closed. There's no else to carry on from. But because a public carries on and has the code inside of it like a book, to think of it as. So now we're opening the book. And so when the player spawns, we need to set spawn info. So set spawn info. That now is allowing us to choose what skin, what gang ID he has, which many servers don't actually use set spawn info to define gangs, factions and bits. They just use it for the skin and the spawn. So set spawn info, we need to open this line up. As you can see, it's opened up for us, showing a little idea, showing you what each section has. So as you know, player ID. So yeah, sorry about this guys, it's what happens when you're trying to concentrate on two screens at once. I have a script on one side of what I'm saying to you guys right now. Okay, team. So you can set the teams up so If it's a gang war and stuff like that, or police, cops and robbers, if they choose a police skin, then their team will be set as 1, and then like a robber can set as 2. But because there's going to be multiple teams, you're going to have your own separate skins and stuff, we will actually change. We'll actually create the factions and gangs, police and bits later on in a different way that actually saves it. So you actually saved into one. This only allows to do it once when you join. So we'll set the team as 0. Use commas to split up each section. So the skin, which is a skin ID, at the moment we'll set it to 121. You can find out all the different skin IDs by googling it, which I will add a link in the description to Sam's wiki skin page. We will set it as well, so later on you can set your own skin and it will be saved all the time, so when you spawn you'll have that certain skin. Float X, float Y, float Z, float rotation. These are the coordinates. So float X is the X on the map, the direction of X, which we are going to set as a define again to just make it easier for changing the spawn round. So just like we did before, spawn underscore X, comma, and then we'll do the same for the others. So spawn underscore Y, spawn underscore Z. And now for rotation, this is the angle you'll be facing at when you spawn. North is set to 0. So from north you got 90 degrees, 180, 270 and 360. In between them you can set it personally. Way to get these coordinates done is to just use /save command in SAMP, which isn't defined in our game mode. It is already in SAMP, and it will save a file to your directory in your GTA users file for you to open it up as, and it has coordinates and bits set for you there. So just to make it simple, we're going to say it's 0. Since we don't really want weapons and ammo, we can just say it all to -1, which is nothing, because these actual these actually weapons set as 0, so we can't use 0 like we normally do. We just want to use -1. So now we've finished that line, we need to close it off and end the line. That line is now set, so when we spawn, we will spawn where the defines are for spawn X, spawn Y, spawn Z, and of course rotation is 0. We can do a define for rotation, but at the moment we're just going to keep it as 0. Okay, so when a player joins the server for the first time, you know, you want to give them so much money. And since this server at the moment doesn't have accounts, we'll just happily give the player, each time he joins, $100. So we'll use give player money, open it up, player ID, which is down to specific player who's joining on their ID, as we said earlier, and then the amount of money we want to give them. So we'll say $100. Close it off and then that line. Since we're using it on player request class, it will still ask you to click spawn. So we need to type it, we need to use spawn player command. So it'll automatically spawn the player and completely miss the section of picking their own skin, since we are setting the skin for them. So we use spawn player, open it up, player ID, and close it again, end that line. Same again, player ID is set for that certain player. Without that player ID, when one person joins the server, everybody else on the server will get respawned at the same time. But thanks to player ID, it will just spawn, it's directed to that one personal player. Even if there's like 2 people joining at the same time, it's still set for each individual player. Now we just need to return 1, so it knows that section is finished and it should return a value. Now we finish it off by closing the book up again, as I call it. You know, you have to open it and close it for each section. Now that there is your last section for spawning. If we now comply it, right, as you can see, we've made an error because we haven't set the spawn X and spawn Y and spawn Z. It will show up as errors, but because it's a critical error, it'll only, on the same line, it'll only read that first error because they're all to do the same thing. So when it says spawn X, you might think, oh, it's just spawn X that's wrong. It's not. If we now redefine, we have to define it again, since that's what the error is saying. We haven't got it defined. So when we type in spawn _X, the name is a define, and since we're not making a word out of this one, we don't need to enclose it like we did for the game mode. We just need to type the number in. So we'll type in 200. We will need later on to get the proper coordinates of an actual spawn place, but that we'll cover at another point in time during another episode. So now if we comply it, we're getting an error. So the first error is unknown directive, which is happening because of course I spelled it wrong again. I'm sorry about this, guys. I'm multitasking, I'm dyslexic, so my mind, you know, word spelling stuff don't play right. Okay, so now we've got spawn Y showing up, but wait a second, it didn't show up when we did spawn X. Why is it showing up now? That's because it'll only show up certain errors. If they're to do the same thing on the same line, it will just show up as one at a time. Sometimes correcting one error can create more errors if you're not careful. So now we just need to type in hash define spawn Y. We'll just type 200, and of course we know that spawn Z, because we've already done spawn X and Y and they're both showing up, and we haven't defined either of these, none of these three at the start. So by knowing that it's already showing them to what we know, it's going to show up spawn Z. So whoops, didn't mean to delete that. If we now just automatically define it ourselves without being told there's an error, it will save a lot of work. Of course, Z is up and down, so we don't want to set it to 200, feet in the air, because by the time you hit the ground you're going to die, which means you're going to be stuck in a circle. So we want to, so of course the ground level is set to 0. Well, actually 0 is set to the ocean level. So we want to set it to at least 5. So we know that we're going to miss the ground. Of course, you need to make sure each one of the defines is spelled exactly the same as it is down here. I just thought then I accidentally didn't put capital S's on these two, which would have shown up that these don't have defines and these don't have anywhere to go. They're nothing. So now we can comply again and we've got no errors. Now that we have no errors, we know that hopefully when we put this on, it should work. It should allow us to spawn. Sometimes, just because there's no errors, doesn't mean there's no bugs. Which I've told numerous people that an error is just a problem in the code. It doesn't mean that the game is 100% going to work how it should. Sometimes you can write it exactly how you want it to and think it should work, but it might not. So now if we put this on the server, it will actually now spawn us to these coordinates we've typed in and come up as Gamemode tutorial. That is the end of today's episode. In the next episode we will carry on showing you more on how to create the game mode, and I will be creating a separate episode set of to do with SAMP but not with the scripting side, with how to set up a server and running a server for just you, for yourself and your friends in a more secure environment than having to port forward by using another free based program. If you have any complaints, any problems, or you just want to say how much you're liking it, just drop a comment below. I read every comment that is posted. Any abusive comments and bits like that I will remove and block people, because I don't want people like that just being an idiot for the point of it. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you watching the next episode, and